All right, we are back with another episode of the Feel a Crutch podcast. Today, I wanted to pretty much continue the conversation we were having last time we were on a couple weeks ago. I still have three amazing guests that'll be able to share their wealth of knowledge and experiences. Again, if you guys have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I will try and get to as many of them as possible. Some great conversations about everything that we wanted to in general. All right, so drop the intro and then we'll get to it. Again, thank everybody for tuning in. We're back with another episode of the Fuel Crutch podcast. Let's talk about it. We've got three distinguished guests on. Two that were on the last time, and one that is a repeat guest. He was actually probably one of the first guests I had on the show in general. So you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves. I'm going to try and figure out what's going on with Facebook, but we'll get this going anyways.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Angie Hicks. I'm the Associate Superintendent of Middle Schools in the Madison Metropolitan School District.
And I'm Dr. Rainey Briggs, and I'm currently serving as the Superintendent of the Baraboo School District.
Good evening. Dr. Larry Love, and I am the middle school principal, or a middle school principal in the Verona Area School District.
All right, so definitely appreciate you guys taking your time to come back on. I do just want to touch base, just because I know you guys are all administrators, but classroom-wise, what grade levels did you guys teach when you first started in the classroom?
I was third through sixth.
And I was middle school, 6-8, PE and health.
Yep, I was also middle school, grade 6 through 8, special education, and also was an avid elective teacher and a few other things in there as well.
Awesome.
So when you guys first started, because Dr. Hicks, it sounds like you started at the elementary school level. What made you choose that level?
Well, actually, my first job was at Whitehorse Middle School at sixth grade. And then I went to elementary, and actually I went there because it was a temporary position at Whitehorse, and actually my certification was 1/6 and not necessarily 1/8 grade. So I was really trained to be an elementary school teacher.
And I think for me, I always knew when I started the program that I wanted to teach middle school. I think there's something very special about that age grade developmentally. I feel like the person I am allows me to interact with them and engage with them in ways that I didn't feel like would be possible with the younger kids. And so, had to go with middle school.
Yeah. And for me, I was a little different, man, because I wanted nothing to do with education. I didn't like kids. I didn't want to work with kids because of some things that I experienced growing up as a youngster myself. But my wife, who worked at Milwaukee Academy of Science, she asked me to volunteer in her class. So I'm like, I'm just get her off my back. I'm gonna go in. So I go in that first time. Then she asked me about a month later. I go in that second time. And I'm kind of like, man, this is actually all right, you know. And then that third time she asked me, I went in, I kind of asked myself that critical question: why aren't I working with kids? You know, and that was after I'd already received a health science corporate community fitness degree. So I ended up going back to get my certification, and I really loved working with middle school, and she was elementary. So I'm like, elementary, runny noses, not here and there, everything. I'm like, nah, I'm good. But I've spent most of my career really working at the elementary level, considering that's something that I didn't even have to touch. So, yeah.
Cool. So then my next question would be, what led you guys to wanting to be administrators?
I don't think that I chose it. I think um, it chose me. Someone saw something in me that I wasn't thinking about for myself, and encouraged me to come out of the classroom and become an administrator. And so that was my journey. I didn't have a desire, even though I had went back to school and got my master's. But had it not been for Miss Chris Hodge, probably would still be in the classroom today. Um, but she said, "Come on out," and I stepped out on faith.
That's what's
And
up.
it's been the best thing that has ever happened to me, because I've had the opportunity to have a huge impact on many lives, and help them to see their dreams and their future. And so instead of just being in a classroom, now I've got the opportunity to help build that for um, whole district. And it's been wonderful.
And for me, man, I had an experience when I became a PE and health teacher. In that process, I remember this interview. It was in a neighboring district here to Madison, in the Sun Prairie School District, and I interviewed for the job. It was about 20 people on that panel, and one of the people were on the phone listening in, and this particular individual wanted her best friend's son to get the job over me. And I remember the principal saying to me, once she offered me the job, I said, "This is going to be awesome. This teacher that I'm going to be working with, teaming with, she has 20 years experience." I'm like, man, I'm going to learn a lot from this individual. Great experience. And the principal said to me, "It's not quite like that. This person isn't quite like you think she is." And for an administrator to say that to me as a brand new teacher coming into the system, it let me know that, like, she hasn't done her job to make sure that this person wasn't creating an environment that wasn't toxic or conducive to teamwork or what have you. So after 3 years of dealing with some things with this particular teacher, or actually a year, I kind of decided it was time for me to get my own administrative license, because what I was dealing with, I didn't want any other educator to have to deal with. Because some educators can't speak up for themselves. They feel like they're too close in terms of, friendships and all those good things. But at the same time, we have an obligation as leaders to make sure that the climate, culture, and all those things are conducive to students being successful, and also staff being successful in those arenas.
Yeah, and I guess for me, it might have been slightly different in the sense that when I set out, I never desired to be an administrator. I actually thought I was going to be a professor. That's why I went and got a doctorate. um, it wasn't initially to had anything to do with K-12 education. However, along the journey of getting a PhD, you get broke. And so prior to me actually starting my classes, I started teaching, and then that next year I was leaving and I was going back for my PhD, but I was like, how am I going to have an income? And so I continued to like sub and all of that kind of stuff. And then as I got deeper into my research, there was this kind of epiphany of like, how can I research and write about things but be so disconnected from them? And so there was always this desire to stay connected to the things that I researched was really important. And so I was like, how do I do both? How do I exist within academia, but how also do I exist in K-12 education, and be able to create um, research that speaks to things that are important to me. And so as I was doing that, I eventually decided like something about working with youth was far more rewarding, refreshing, aligned to who I am and my calling. And so I decided that I wasn't going to be a university professor, and that it was probably best for me to look at administrative roles within K-12, because I did want to have impact on systems and structures that we put in place in schools, particularly because the research that I was doing was illuminating so much about the struggles that particularly black boys and black students largely were facing, how schools had not been serving them well, so on and so forth. And so I was like, here's my end to begin to be able to impact those systems, because from the classroom level, like I can impact what happens in my class, but to have that larger impact, I needed to be in a seat of an administrator.
What's up?
Nope, that makes sense. So just diving in a little deeper, what are some of the things that you guys have seen in your schools that you've been the administrator for or the leader of, that you found that worked for students of color? Because for some odd reason, the black and brown students are performing the lowest. And what are some things that you guys have seen for the ones that have been successful that you think should probably be discussed and mimicked in as many different areas as we can?
I think I could start. I'll say one thing, just kind of nuancing your words a bit. Our black and brown students are performing the lowest as it is measured by these westernized assessments. And I think what we don't take into account, or often isn't part of the conversation, is who's teaching our black and brown students and how are we demanding much of them. So, there's all this research about being a warm demander. And if our students aren't experiencing teachers who can understand their cultural background, or who aren't demanding much of them, or who allow them to, do their thing because they don't want to have a behavior issue or whatever the case may be, students are likely not going to rise to, or they do rise to that lowered expectation. But when we really want to think about how students will rise to the higher expectations, those higher expectations must be put in front of them. And it's not to say that only teachers of color can do that, but I do think there's something about the pedagogical beliefs of teachers of color that we bring into classrooms that tend to impact how students perform. We recognize that performance isn't just about math and reading, but how do students show up in the arts, and how do they show up in leadership and all these other domains. And we draw on those things so that we can see impact in reading and math and all these other standardized areas that we're measuring to determine if schools are succeeding or not succeeding. So I think that's part of it. And then I think the other piece, and this kind of goes back to conversation from last time, is really thinking about where are the opportunities for students of color to have their voices heard and deeply heard. How do they get opportunities to show up in the school community as their true and authentic self, so that they see themselves as belonging in these environments, despite having probably the majority, if not all, of their teachers not look like them.
Go ahead, Doc.
Well, I would just echo what Larry has just stated. That's exactly where I was going in terms of being a warm demander and helping our young people have productive struggle, funds of knowledge, being able to see themselves within the community, and then also leveraging what Larry also said around my research was, effective practices of teachers of African American children, and not all of my participants were white. Were black or of color, and what I found in over the years is kids don't respond to what you look like; they respond to how you make them feel. And so, if you value them, you affirm them, you see them for who they are, and support them to getting to their next level of challenge or growth or on their trajectory, um, they're going to show up in ways that they might not when they don't feel that. One of the things that I had to really do with staff when I was a principal is really to help them to see who they were and their responsibility and their commitment to the work for working with scholars who didn't look like them. And one of the things that I always did is in our spaces, whenever we were doing professional learning, I always had centered it on the children and who they were serving, and help them to see that they don't look you don't they don't you don't look like them, but you're moving them and you're helping them to grow academically, socially, emotionally, and for them to be able to hear that and to know that and to believe that, that helped them to show up for the young people in the ways that they needed, and being that warm demander with high expectations.
That's really powerful. I want to share something really unique. So my research was done on African American males' perspectives on factors that promote or impede academic success in a predominantly white high school. Right. So all of my participants were African American male students. Here's a little bit of research. Research suggests that students of color who have had at least one teacher of color may do better on tests and be less likely to have disciplinary issues. Research also suggests that white students show improved problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity when they have diverse teachers. Now, I had 10, I think it was about 10 to 12 students of color, males, who have never had a staff of color. And these were juniors and seniors. So think about that. All the way up through their education, they have never had a staff of color, which means that many of their classmates, white kids that are with them in this predominantly white high school, has never also had a staff of color in the classroom like that. So when you think about the benefits of both students of color and white students, you see the importance of having staff of color, in our schools and working with our kids because of what it brings to the table. But what I found unique through my study is that there was about 7 or 8 things that stood out as important, but there was 3 at the top. And the number one thing was staff and student relationships. Like, think about that. Staff and student relationships. And then you have, if students had a staff of color, they may do better on tests and be less likely to have disciplinary issues, right? And if you're a white student, you show improved problem solving and critical thinking and creativity when they have diverse teachers, right? But the number one thing was staff and student relationships. The second thing was peer-to-peer relationships, right? If you are in a predominantly white high school and there's only like 10 of you, think about those relationships and what you're drawn to the most. Usually we're drawn to people who look like us, who sound like us, that may do some things that we may do, right? But what are those peer relationships like? And then the last thing is our students being able to advocate for themselves, right? Feeling like they have a sense of belonging, that they matter in those spaces, and somebody cares, about who they are and what they do and what they bring to the table. So throughout that research around having, staff of color, and then also my own research of the things that impede or promote academic success, I mean, there was definitely some correlations there that really opened my eyes to the importance of making sure that at some point in every one of our kids' educational experience, K-12, I'm going to say first, K-12, for K-12, they need to have a staff of color at some point in those early years, that because it does breed something different than what it has turned out for our students.
And
I will say,
I appreciate what Dr. Briggs said. I just wanted to speak off of what Dr. Briggs was saying. I think the relationships is what undergirds it all. But I think oftentimes when we talk about relationships, people hear that in terms of superficial relationships. And so I just want to be clear here that when Dr. Briggs says relationships, and I know this because I know you, when I talk about relationships, when Dr. Hicks talks about relationships, we're not just talking about, oh, you know that student's name and you know their parents' name and you know that they got 6 cats at home. We're talking about deep relationship, like meaningful relationships that we can then latch on and demand much of these students. So yeah, just want to make sure that part is super clear. We're not talking about just like, oh, I got a relationship with you, but like we're in relationship in terms of this teaching and learning thing. And so when you share what's working for you as the student and I'm the teacher, I'm receiving that just in the same way that I expect you to be receiving what I'm putting out teaching. And as we're in this work together, grappling with what's going to help all of our students be the most successful. And I think if folks are familiar with the work of like Zaretta Hammond, she talks about this notion of learning partnerships. That's where we're really talking about when we get to this idea of relationships. It's deeper than that superficial stuff.
It's kicking in that level of genuine care. Somebody spoke earlier just about the feelings. Kids can feel when somebody genuinely cares about them and will go out of their way to really try as hard as possible to raise to whatever level of expectation you give to them, as long as they feel like you care. Even the kid that is perceived to be one that is the more challenging kid in the classroom, I promise you, if they feel like there's a level of care from that instructor or for that staff member or support person that works with them, they will give their best and they'll work as hard as they can. I did also want to just to talk about some of the things that I know we all know as educators and have gone through certain levels of training, but how just sometimes social media gets involved when we have certain conversations or somebody feels some type of way about something that's going on in a school or a school district. I want you guys to just share from your own perspectives and experiences, just to talk about the level of confidentiality and certain things that can't be shared, even though you'll see somebody jump on social media and talk about like, well, my kid got this level of punishment and why aren't they doing X, Y, and Z to the other student? I mean, like, again, we know there's certain laws that go into it, but can you guys please explain in your areas of expertise so that way we can stop with some of these false narratives about how people like nothing's being done, just so that way people that haven't gone through the levels of training that we have can understand.
Yeah. Does anyone want to start, or
go ahead, Doc?
Start knowing that I tend to be the first person of the three of us who would deal with a student misconduct kind of situation. And so I guess the first thing I'll put out there is what I always tell parents to remember is you would want your child's information protected. And so the other student involved in a situation, information is going to be protected. There are laws around that. So we all are aware of like FERPA, which tells us that we have an obligation to ensure that our students' records and personal information are protected. That's inclusive of what kind of discipline they receive. Um, Certainly, I think parents and community folks, when it comes to discipline, I understand that emotions are high, especially if your student is involved. But recognizing that in most school districts, I can speak for mine, we have a progressive discipline plan or progressive response plan that kind of informs us of the steps that we need to take with particular situations. But that's not the end all be all. I think other factors we have to take into account are things like, does the student have an IEP? Does the student have a 504 plan? Those things are also legal documents that might have provisions written in them that trump, for lack of a better word, what the progressive response plan says in that moment. And so we're looking at all of these things to make a decision, and we can't tell you, oh, well, this student has an IEP that says that there's an alternative to how we discipline for this particular situation. And so I think just knowing that as educators, we want to do our very best by all students. And I know I can speak again for myself, like I don't have a desire to see students suspended and punitively disciplined. But when we do get to that point, there is a level of like due diligence that I as a school leader have to ensure is happening. And I can't necessarily share all of those details with any person who just desires to know.
No, I definitely appreciate you sharing that because so many people that just don't understand and then get that conception or perception that nobody cares, or it's they're out to get my child, things of that nature. And I think that's important that people understand that. Go ahead, Dr. Hicks.
No, I was just going to add that being from the principal position to now where I am, so I'm the recipient of a lot of the parents' feedback from when they're not happy with the schools and how the schools are handling situations, and everything that Dr. Love stated is factual, and we can't speak to you about other people's children, just like I wouldn't speak about their child to someone else, and what the consequences or the situation was. I think even outside of that, I think that we all should be in the space of coming together to look at some of the deeper root causes of what's going on and how it transpired, because what also happens a lot too is that everyone who is involved in those situations have a perspective, right? And they're going to tell the story based upon what they view as what occurred. Our responsibility is to look at it all in its totality and find evidence and get feedback, right? And in that, and when we begin to do all of that work and gathering the evidence and asking the questions, we also know that kids as well as adults are going to communicate in a way that benefits them, and not necessarily tell the whole story. So there's their truth, the other truth, and then the truth. And so it's our responsibility to get at the truth. And in doing so, people don't like that, because once they have a belief, they want to hold on to that belief and not listen to the whole situation in its totality. That's why it's really, really, really important for when things occur in schools for us, schools and district to communicate as soon as possible, because once the story has been told one way, people tend to stand on that and ride with it to the end.
Yeah. And I don't think any of us wake up every day and we say to ourselves, you know what? I'm going to go in here today and I want to suspend 4 kids. I want to make sure that, I find one that I can expel. I want to call a parent and just tell a parent that I'm calling you to tell you a story that I just made up about something that your kid did. Right? Like that's not what we do. If we don't have to call you, guess what? We don't want to call you, right? Like that's to me is a big one because if we're calling you, something happened, or we're reaching out to let you know something amazing that your kid did, right? And I want to err on the side of calling you to give you an update of something that your kid did just amazing in school. They were supportive of others. They're doing great learning, like all those things. But there's like this belief that school is wrong, right? The people working in schools, my kid got to be telling the truth, right? And that's unfortunate because I think we all know no one wants to go home to their parents and disappoint their parents, let their parents down, cause their parents to feel like, son, daughter, I can't believe you did this. Like nobody wants to hear that from their parents either. So that embellishment of things that have taken place in the school environment because of that peer to peer. You heard me talk about that peer to peer a little bit ago, right? That peer to peer influence is huge, right? Because if kids' parents were in the space with them, most of the time they're not going to do some of the things that they do or allow their peers to have that level of influence on them. But there's stories that they go home and they tell their parents, and their parent buy it hook, line, and sinker, right? And then that makes, as educators, whether you're a principal, assistant, superintendent, or school board member that's receiving phone calls, or whoever, or social media that's getting some level of story that's kind of making the school district look bad, right? Without all the information, it's really challenging because 99% of the time we're not going to go on social media and respond to things that's being said, right? Because that kind of adds fuel to the fire for the most part, and doesn't support what exactly it is that's kind of going on. Because we can't say to you, hey, no, little Johnny, he got an IEP, he gets this and this. Oh, he got a 504, he gets to receive these services or whatever. Like we can't put that level of information out there because of, like you said, Dr. Love, FERPA, and for other confidentiality reasons, So it's one in which, the history of a school and a school district also puts us in a corner. And what I mean by that, before, let's say Larry or Dr. Hicks took over schools or positions or a district, there's things that happen before you, right? And as you come in, your job is to kind of maybe straighten things up a little bit. But the history of schools or certain buildings or a district, some narrative has been created for those schools and for that district prior to you getting there. And you're the one that to some degree left to like let me get these wrinkles out a little bit. Let me hold these certain people accountable, whether it's teachers, whether it's kids, whether it's the board members, whether it's community members. There's an accountability measure, and people mistake accountability for retaliation, right? And when you're being held accountable for something, people look at it like, well, I mean, he don't like me or she don't like me, because of this or because of that. No, I'm holding you accountable for the things that we said we're going to do for kids, what our mission and vision says we're going to do for kids and how we're going to do it. And a part of that is that confidentiality piece, that social media piece, those stories that's being told, the people that's being hurt and harmed in that process. All those things have an impact, right? With those intentions that people have. They don't think about the impact that's there from those intentions that they have of putting a story out there or saying something that's not true or that story that's causing harm to other people. So there's a lot that kind of goes into it. And I think everything Dr. Love spoke about, Dr. Hicks talked about, And then this last piece that I just kind of brought in, there's a lot of intentions that people say, I didn't intend for that to happen. I didn't intend to say that. I didn't intend to do that. But your intentions have had some impact that has damaged the community and damaged the school system, damaged the staff, damaged the students. And then we sit here once again trying to put it all together when it's already hard for us. It's already challenging, right? And we're starting from behind the eight ball and we're trying to get ahead of it. But this intentional piece of disruption that continues to be there causes more harm and hurt to the community of education, period.
I super appreciate that, especially just thinking about impact versus intent. Like you can have the best intentions in mind, but the impact is still going to be the impact. Um, you brought up something that I wanted to see if you guys would be willing to share, Larry, as somebody that inherited a building. Rainey, you inherited a school district. Dr. Hicks, you also inherited a school district as well. What are some of just the challenges that you guys have had to face with inheriting the different places that you and positions that you've inherited? Like I can think about Dr. Briggs. You inherited a very tough situation when you took over to become the superintendent of Baraboo. Like just how difficult was that, and like the level of grace you may have or may not have received. And each one of you guys can kind of like comment for your particular position.
Yeah. Right now, even before getting to Baraboo, there was this notion that Baraboo is this racist community. There's a lot of things kind of happening there that if you're someone of color, you don't want to go down that way. There was a viral photo situation that existed prior to me getting there as well. That was worldwide, not just in the state of Wisconsin, but worldwide. And those students and staff, administrators, school district at large, it was really tough. From many of the things that I've heard and some of the work that I've done as a consultant also in supporting the district, it was really challenging. However, coming into that position, there was a lot of things that, like, I think the superintendent before me did really, really well. I think that they did some things that was really strong and powerful. But I think there's some things that, only sometimes people like myself or Dr. Love or Dr. Hicks can bring to a situation. There's some calm, there's some grace, there's some supports that we can think about different that may need to be utilized to support situations differently. And given what I inherited, I would say it's not as bad as people make it out to be. I think being in the space to see it for yourself makes a world of a difference. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Not at all. But are there things that the school district, the community, are there things that they're doing well? There's a number of organizations in the Baraboo community that's, united against hate. They're really putting their best foot forward to make sure that if hate is happening, that it's being hit in the face. If there's people discriminating, if there's people bringing in, racist undertones and things like that, there's organizations that's right there that's hitting those things in the face. And then I think also for myself, coming with the skills, knowledge, and background that I have, those things don't fly with me. Anybody will tell you if it happens or if something is brought into the space, where it doesn't even have to just be race. It could be gender based. It can be, economically disadvantaged based. It doesn't matter to me. There's something that I'm going to kind of have and ask people to kind of think about, right, and kind of process, because the moment that I don't say something is the moment that I'm also in support of what's being done, right? And I think that part of me as a person, I'm not cool with, but I also know that I cannot carry the weight of every individual that's I'm going to use the term not educated enough to know that the hurt that they're causing people, right? I know that. So a part of what I've done is I've supported building the capacity of those that work alongside me, those that are in the district as educators, because it's their job also to lean in and challenge their peers, lean in and make sure that their peers know when they've caused hurt to somebody, or they're causing hurt to the community at large, that someone speaks up against it and say something about it, right? If you stand by and watch, you're a bystander. You know what? That's not going to save the community. That's not going to keep us from dealing with some of those different things. So stand up, say something, be somebody different than what you've always been, and do not allow your friendships to get in the way of you doing the right thing. That's been my message since I've been in Baraboo. If a friendship causes you to not do the right thing, then that wasn't the right friendship to have anyway.
Well, in my experience, it when you go into any situation in a new environment, they have a history, they have a culture, they have an identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, whether I may know some of the identity or be a part of it or not, I have to also take some time to learn, to explore, to become a part of, to investigate, to ask questions, so that I am asking the right questions, moving in the right way, and being myself while I'm doing it, but in a learner stance, because there are all kinds of narratives out there about lots of things, and I need to learn and know for myself so that I can help to know the shifts or the things that need to be done to help leverage that community to a desired state. So that's the first part. The second part is just being able to identify who I am and understand my role and responsibilities, not just to the school, the district, but also to the world. Because like Dr. Briggs said, if you see something and you say nothing, then you are part of the problem, just like the person who's creating that issue. And I know there are lots of people who don't want to speak, but it's my responsibility to help you to learn to use your voice to speak. I think for me, in the position, in the role that I am in right now, it's a large system. It's very different than being over one school versus being over a whole bunch of schools and everybody who's in those. And so I think what happens is that we have to step back. Well, this is me. I have to step back and actually work intentionally with the leaders, because so goes the leaders, goes their school communities, and it keeps going on down, goes the children, everything, right? And if our leaders are not in a space and don't understand, how can we expect children to learn, and then families, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So it's really important that our leaders are knowledgeable and skilled in navigating complex issues, addressing issues professionally and ethically, even when it goes against, like Dr. Briggs said, like friendships or relationships, because at the end of the day, we're doing this for this work for children, right? Who will be our next leaders. And if we can't do it, then how are we expecting them to do it? I think that for me, it's really truly about authenticity. I continue to learn and grow every day in my role, and which levers I need to push and pull. But it's always an invitation And sometimes the invitation isn't really truly an invitation, because regardless of if you want to do it or not, it's going to be an invitation, and you're still going to have to do it. Not because I'm telling you to do it, because that's what the need is for young people. That's what the need is for staff. Staff will push back because, we're comfortable. You know what? There is discomfort in growth.
Absolutely.
If you continue to just operate and move in ways that allow you to be comfortable, you're truly not growing, and you're truly not pushing yourself. And then if you're not pushing yourself for growth, I can guarantee you're not pushing the young people who you're there to serve, their growth either. So so it's always a challenge, but challenges are also opportunities to learn, opportunities to growth, opportunities to have input, opportunities to listen, and be collaborative. Because like Dr. Briggs says, we cannot shoulder all of this on our own. And while we are leaders, I call everybody in the building as a leader, right? We have to get them to believe and see and understand who they are as leaders, right? They think a leader is one in the middle and the front. There are many, many silent leaders, and we have to leverage them into spaces too. So I'm not sure if I answered all of your questions, because I could keep going, but I'm going to stop there and let Dr. Love go.
Yeah, I think to begin, I'll start with what I heard Dr. Hicks say in terms of when you enter into a space, there's already a history and culture. And I'll name that, like, to begin, like that in and of itself isn't the challenge. That to understand and learn the history and the culture of a organization or new space that you're entering into is kind of expected. Like you just have to do that. I think sometimes the challenge comes on the backside of that, when there's an expectation that you essentially conform to what the history and culture already is, even if that history and culture may be in some ways detrimental to particular individuals within that organization or space. I would say for myself, one of the things that has been particularly challenged as I've learned about the history and culture has been this belief about the role of a principal is, and how they're supposed to engage with or operate within the organization. And so what is the relationships and whatnot that they might have with teachers and students and families and so on and so forth. And this assumption that we are like the ultimate power of a school. And so sometimes I think that can get a little challenging, navigating that line of where am I able to have a relationship in the sense of, like, I'm out here, I'm connecting with teachers and building that professional relationship, but then on the other side, like, there is an expectation of me as a principal in terms of what I then have to expect of teachers. And so kind of going back to that notion of accountability, oftentimes principals, we find ourselves in that middle space where our teachers want to know us personally, but yet we still have this professional side in which we have to carry out expectations or enforce expectations and give critical feedback and all of those things. And sometimes when we do that, when it's not the best feedback, or we have to have those hard conversations, it's immediately like this sense of, oh no, the relationship is damaged. And I think sometimes people fail to recognize, like, I wear multiple hats, and so when I'm wearing my professional hat, that has nothing to do with the personal, and who you might be as a person outside of the profession. But within the profession, as a leader, I'm expected to coach and develop and give feedback and all of those things. And sometimes it may be hard, but not trying to get teachers to not see that as a attack on who they are. And I think another challenge has been this idea of, like, having to prove oneself in the work. And I don't know that that is specific to my context. I don't know if that's specific to me being a Black leader. I can't really name like why that shows up, but we've read the books and articles throughout our programs and whatnot, so we know that there's something there that as Black educators, we're often entering into spaces, particularly predominantly white spaces, and we carry this burden of having to prove ourselves. And so the ways in which I get questioned about why this and why that, and don't get me wrong, I want people to ask the question of why, because that helps me be better. But it's about how the question is being asked or how people try to push back, that contributes to this feeling of having to prove yourself. Like I know what I'm talking about, or I understand the evidence-based practices behind this strategy, or I have been in a classroom similar to you, and I've done these things similarly to you. There tends to be that proving yourself factor that is kind of at play as well. And I think those probably are the biggest ones for me.
Appreciate you guys' responses. What I want to do is I had asked earlier today for if anybody had any questions to comment, so that way I can ask. The only person that I got to ask was Jessica Fleischman. And what she asked, I want to put it to all three of you because you all have spent time in Madison in some capacity. And her question was, in your words, what makes the culture of the Madison area different or challenging as a place to lead? Larry, that could be from your lens of leading the schools or the building or your classroom. And the same goes for Dr. Briggs and Dr. Hicks, because I know you guys have all had different levels of interaction with Madison. And so just thinking about the Madison culture, talk about how it being different or challenging being in the work.
Jamal, when you ask that question, are you speaking of Madison, the city, or are you saying Madison as in Madison School District?
She said Madison area as a different or challenging place to lead, and what is something about being a leader here that you really enjoy?
I would say, for me, I never have found it challenging to lead, first off, because leading is what you make it. If you find yourself in situations where it's challenging to lead, that means that maybe you didn't put enough time into relationships, getting to understand how you need to be with certain people based on what you know about them. Really leaning into maybe, I'm going to say, the strategic plans and holding people accountable for those things. I think if holding people accountable causes it to be more challenging to lead, that means you're doing the right work. That means you're calling people to the carpet in a different way that's supporting the reason that we all have jobs, right? The reason we all have jobs is that we have kids that need to learn, grow, develop, and have life experiences through education that's going to set them up to be even stronger than we are once they hit society in a different way as they get older. So to me, I always say to people when they ask me or say, oh my gosh, I would never want to do the job that you do. And I always say, I love the work that I do. I love the job that I have. But the job is what you make it, whether it's a principal, whether it's a classroom teacher, whether it's a custodian, whether it's a food service worker, whether it's a superintendent, assistant superintendent, it's what you make it. If negativity is around you and you don't address it for it to be different, well, then guess what? You're making leadership really hard for yourself if you don't address those things. If you keep putting yourself or getting yourself into some dilemmas that you probably shouldn't get into because you weren't collaborative, you didn't bring other people, into it to support you and to think differently, giving you different perspectives, then yes, it's going to be hard, right? What I love most about Madison, this area, and when I say surrounding area, I mean, we can go, I'm including Baraboo in this too, because I think they're only 40 minutes away, 30 minutes, depending upon where you are. But there are resources. There are people that have experiences that you don't. There are things that people bring to the table, having different perspectives that you may not always see, that kind of supports you in your own growth, right? Just because I'm a superintendent doesn't mean that I need to be absent of professional growth, right? Or seeing things differently. So I really appreciate the different people's perspectives. I really appreciate the places in which that are different than the place in which I work, so that I can continue to learn and ask questions myself and grow. And that's what I really appreciate about the area in which we have.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Larry. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I was just gonna say I would agree with Dr. Briggs' very first statement. Like, leading isn't the challenge. Like, I've not found leading to be the challenging part of the work. Now, do challenges come about? Absolutely. But as a leader, that's the work. You identify what the challenge is, and you identify a plan to move through the challenge, ultimately to reach a solution. And ideally, that plan is collaborative in nature, so that other people, to Dr. Briggs's point, are brought into the conversation to help identify the solution. So in terms of leading in Madison area, I don't know that I found that to be challenging. Um, and the challenges of the work are expected. But again, to Dr. Bird's point, I tell people all the time too, I love the work that I do. I love being a principal. I love when those challenges come up. Now, sometimes they'd be like, "Oh, it's a lot," but it makes the work that much more rewarding when you are able to pull in a community of people to say, "Hey, this is a challenge that's before us. How do we work to identify a solution?" And that's the work of being a leader. I think if we go back to one of your questions earlier in terms of test scores and all of that, that's a challenge that is before us as leaders, and so that's part of the work we do. We come together. We reference our strategic framework, or if you're in the position to be mobilized in the community to draft a strategic framework, whatever it is, we leverage that. We have to be very clear on what our vision is and what our purpose is. And when you're clear about the vision and purpose or mission of your building or your district, it makes identifying solutions to challenges that much easier. But if you're trying to lead anywhere without vision or clarity or any kind of sense of purpose, is going to be a bit more challenging. And so I guess my suggestion to anybody who's trying to lead in any space, Madison area or otherwise, is to make sure that you're aware and understand fully what the vision of the district, the school, the community is, and how you fit within it, and making sure that your own personal values align with it before you say, "This is where I want to lead." And I think the thing that I have loved the most about leading in the area has been the relationships. I feel like, kind of again to Dr. Briggs' point, I don't even know if I need to answer the question, is that we do have a wealth of knowledge in our community. And when we are able to tap in and really partner, like it makes it so much better. I mean, even with us on this on the podcast, like, we're all in different districts, we do different work, but these are definitely individuals that I will call and talk to and say, "Hey, as a leader, how might I navigate this? Or as a leader, this challenge has come before me and I've never experienced that before. Have you experienced it? And what solutions or suggestions might you have? And so I think that has been my favorite part. It has definitely been the community connections.
Again, when I hear the question about leading in the area, what came to me in that is like what both Dr. Love and Dr. Briggs said. Like leading is what we do, right? I think that the how you show up in it is a big part of that. So if I'm showing up centering myself and my emotions, then it's going to be a challenge, right? Because in the spaces, we're here to serve, we're here to support, we're here to bring others along, all the things. And if it's only about, if I'm looking through a lens or looking out the window and not looking in the mirror and I'm seeing me in all of it, then that's a problem and you're going to have a difficult time leading, right? And so I've all of my career has been here in this area, and so for me, every situation, every new opportunity has caused me to lead. On the onset, as I learned the terrain, but I'm who I am in all of it. I'm taking it in, learning from others, getting other perspective, growing my knowledge base, so that I am not stifled into one lane, right? And so you always have to be seeking to be your best self, and being your best self doesn't mean being stagnant. You always growing, always looking for more research, more evidence, more feedback. Here in this space, like Larry just said, how are we interfacing, right? Because if I'm showing up and it's all about my way, the highway, and anyone who says anything to me to push back on me, and I hear it like, oh, they're attacking, I need to pause and I need to think about, how am I hearing that? How am I reflecting on how I think I might have heard that, right? So I have to also do my own work. I mean, you can't just show up and say, oh, I'm a leader and I've got this, because we all got opportunity for growth, development, and we can always be better than what we are. So
let me ask this as a follow-up. How long did it take you to get there? Because I think that might be a human nature, natural thing, is to feel personally attacked when certain things are said to you, about you, whether it be to your face in person or on social media, because I've definitely seen a lot of things. And I've definitely said to a couple of y'all individually that I don't know if I had that level of maturity to be able to withstand some of the things that I've seen personally attacked towards y'all.
yeah, again, your life is a journey, not a destination. We all get there at different times and rate. Just some it takes a really, really long time. Others takes less time. It doesn't matter the age. It's just, am I working on me and my stuff in order to help to move things forward, right? A lot of people don't understand that and don't know. I've been able to figure some things out for myself, so I try to help others, so they don't have to go down the same road and they can learn it before I did. Because the sooner they learn things, then they can help the young people quicker, right? Or learn and make shifts or whatever. But everybody's journey is different. It might takes longer than others, but you have to do your own work.
Jamal, like, I don't know that in terms of like hearing things and feeling personally attacked and seeing them go to social media and all those things, like, I'm not sure that there is necessarily a point where you just get like, oh, it doesn't phase me. Because we are human, and as humans we have emotions. We're not like sociopaths. And so I want to be very clear to people in the community. The things that you do say about leaders, that does bother us. It does hurt. Now it might not knock us off our square because we know that it comes with the work, but it isn't to say like we don't see those things and we don't hurt from them or we don't get bothered by them. Like let's call it what it is. And then especially when we're charged with having to show up again and again and again, in service of a community who might say or do these different things, it is a little, for lack of a better word, bogus. Um, but at the same time, I think to the point of like, how do we manage it? I feel for me, it's a matter of having a team of people around me to help call me on my right and on my wrong, to help challenge the thoughts that I'm putting out there. So if I think this is the direction we want, that I think we need to go, while many people will say the principal gets to decide that, sure, that might be true, but a good principal or good leader isn't deciding these things in isolation. And so 99% of the things that I move forward with as a building leader has been discussed with other people. Now, it might have not been discussed with the entire school staff, community, so on and so forth, because we would never make progress or get anything done if I had to go through that level of gathering input around like day-to-day decisions. But all of those decisions, I'm in community with other people, some who might have similar beliefs to me, many who do not. Some who are new to the organization, some who have been there for 20 plus years. And that's intentional because it helps us to push on each other's thoughts, to suggest new thoughts, and to ensure that we are ultimately doing what we believe to be in the best interest of our students, our staff, and our community.
I think I'm going to say ditto to everything that both of them have said, and I'm also going to add that trust is real, right? And I say trust is real because I think for most of us, some of us may say, "Hey, you have to earn my trust," and for some people, it's like you have my trust until you lose it, right? And I think given what you deal with or situation, it could be either one of those given the situation in which you're dealing with. But I also know this. I've had someone say to me in recent year, people are looking for reasons to be upset with you. Now I'm gonna say that again. People are looking for reasons to be upset with you. Now just imagine that. Every day you step into your clothes, you walk, you get in your car, you heading to work, going into work, somebody's waiting and looking for you to either say, do, or think something that's not okay with them so that they can put you on blast, right? So just imagine the level of number one, belief, knowing what you stand for and what you value, how those three things have to come into play in almost every move you make, right? When you're at our level of leadership, it's almost like you have to like make sure whatever move you make, if you make a mistake, you own it. You appreciate people for either pointing it out, like Larry said, like tell me when I'm wrong. Also, let me know when I'm right if you want to. But at the same time, if you don't know what you stand for, you value, or you believe, things are going to eat you alive. They are going to eat you alive because I can tell you right now that many people in leadership, when someone says to them, people are looking for reasons to be upset with you, you won't be able to eat, you won't be able to sleep, you won't be able to think because you think you're going to make a mistake, right? That somebody's going to just run you over the coals, for it. So I've learned that when I make mistakes, you own them, right? And in some cases, there are other people who who make mistakes that's on your team, right? And you hold them accountable but you don't do it publicly. You do it in a way that, you know what, you may own that mistake they made, but you work with them on the side to let them know that, hey, I care about you, I appreciate you, but what can we do so this doesn't continue to happen, or this doesn't happen again, right? Because we're in roles where we can take that sometimes, because the likelihood that somebody's going to come at me sideways on some of these things may not be as high as they would for, you know, someone that's maybe in a principal role, someone in a teacher role, that you can support different, but also put something in place so these things don't happen again. So when you know what you stand for, you know you believe in the people that you have with you, you have a really solid team around you. You know, the people that you hire to do their jobs, they do their jobs, right? I tell my staff all the time, like, I'm not going to do your job. You were hired to do this job. I believe in you. I trust in you to lead, right? I'm also not a micromanager, right? Because once you start micromanaging, now you are going to be doing their job, right? You're now telling them what they should be doing, as opposed to allowing them to lead their staff, to be that person that people can kind of turn to, ask questions, get advice from you, or what have you. That's not saying that I'm not going to be there to support you, you know, make sure you have some guidance, you know, if it's something that I noticed is needed. But I also know that it trust in the people that you have around you. And the reason that you brought them on board with you is because you trust them. You believe in them. And you know that they stand for what you stand for in the work, and will call you out on, you know, when you need it, or give you some, hey, that right there, I don't know, I disagree. I respectfully disagree, but I've also was thinking about this or thinking about that. You know, it means a lot. So I think those three things for me is know what you stand for, you know, what you value, and what you believe are critical at this level, because there's all kinds of things kind of coming at you. Supposedly, other people know your life better than you do, right? Which is kind of crazy to even think about, you know. So when people are looking for things, you know, if you keep looking, you're gonna find something, right? But what you find is usually gonna be something that you made up in your mind yourself, and not a lot of facts behind it, right? So, and I think, Jamal, you and I had this conversation just a couple of days ago, or yesterday, or whenever it was, that these things kind of happen, and you find yourself kind of on the defensive, but then you also like, these folks don't even know me. I know I don't. People don't see me out doing stuff. I don't talk to people like that. But if you know you, and you believe in you, you're gonna be all right.
And I would just add to
So
what Rainey said about that critical friends piece.
Mm-hmm.
We need critical friends. I mean, I'm experiencing a lot of like, wait, you you didn't push back on that? You didn't ask questions? Because first and foremost, we're all human beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't all have the answers. And we need people to push in on us so that, you know, we don't go down the rabbit hole. Guess we have a peripheral vision that only goes so far, and we have blind spots. So I welcome those, the feedback, the pushback, again, going back to Larry, it's the how, right? Um, we need that. Otherwise, you know, you just like going, you know, hey, let's get it going, and I'm doing it my way. No, how is what it is that we're doing best for all of the people in the organization,
Mm-hmm.
not just for, you know, small. And we need critical friends.
Absolutely. You know, my dad used to always say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Right. And I think about that all the time. And I say that to some parents sometimes when we're thinking about, when they're talking about who their kids hang with, or even who they sometimes hang with. And I always say, my dad always said to me, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And we can think of somebody that we know in our past, from our history, that maybe ran with the wrong group, and you knew, like, we knew that that might turn out that way, because we knew what was kind of going down and what was happening. And to this day, I keep that on the forefront of my mind, because I don't want to put myself in situations that I have to be able to, I have to get a lawyer. I gotta, have people like called in as witnesses and all that good stuff. So I do everything I can to stay out of those situations because of what my dad used to say to me. And that's something that I think about all the time, because if you know who you hanging with and you know what they get into and what they don't, you can alleviate some of those situations being as bad as they could be for you.
So I'm hearing that self-awareness is huge, and not letting certain feelings deter you from being in certain positions and in certain places. So what's some words of advice that you would give to somebody to keep them from not moving forward and being in certain places, so that way they can be a voice? Because I know for a fact that there are plenty of people, and I know there's probably people listening that have wishes, desires, have thoughts, and want to be more vocal, but that fear kind of keeps them from stepping out on whatever it is that they really want to do. I would also say that I'm probably one of those people that had hard times doing that, but as I've gotten older and had more experience, that I've kind of put some of those things to the side. But from someone that is in you guys' positions, what kind of words of advice would you share?
Jamal, can you say the question one more time? Advice to people who, what was the last part?
Just those that would let their feelings stop them from putting themselves out there, whether it be through action with work or just words in general. Yeah, that's kind of where my thought process went, based on some of the things that you guys were saying. Just based on like knowing that, like you said, Larry, like we have feelings. They hurt. It may not knock us off our square completely, but it's something that we do have to deal with internally. But there are a lot of people that will allow that fear to stop them from taking the necessary steps or saying what needs to be said to move forward and push the needle.
Yeah, I think a big part of it, or what advice I would give, is you got to first unpack that fear. Like what's behind that? Because if whatever it is that you're trying to advocate for is that important or so important to you, then why let fear stop you? And so then it becomes what's really more powerful, the impact or the change or the fear. And I recognize, again, yeah, we all have fears and whatever, but you got to unpack that. What is it that you're really fearful of? Is it fearful of, there might be some kind of recourse taken if you speak up on a job, or is it fear that if you open the floodgates, you can't control yourself and you're gonna go too far? Is it, like really what's behind that fear that stops you? And I don't necessarily know that I have an answer of like what to do with the fear after you unpack it. I think that's a journey that we each individually go on. And my journey will look very different than others. What I can say is um, I was fortunate to be in spaces and work with leaders who did value my voice and often would solicit my voice. But I also knew that um, there was a respect factor there as well. And so when I was sharing things where I may disagree with something or thought we should be doing something different or going a different route, I didn't do that in a way to be contentious, but really did it in a way of saying, hey, I noticed this. Here's the results of X. Here's data that I'm pulling in. Might we consider doing Y over here? And I think when you approach it in that way, where it's thought out, it's sound, it might be rooted in some type of data. If we're thinking about within a school context, I think you get a lot further than just saying I disagree with you or we shouldn't do that, because then it sounds personal versus rooted in the mission, the vision, and the actual work that we're trying to do.
I I would to continue on what Larry talked about was stated. I would give them the advice of know who you are, right? And I say know who you are, which also goes with what Rainey said, because there's something in you that's stopping you, right? From speaking up, showing out, doing whatever it is that you need to do. And if you're not willing to get to know who you are and unpack some of that, it's going to hold on to you and stop you from doing a tremendous amount of things in your life. So what I would suggest is getting a therapist, somebody to help you to kind of like deconstruct those emotions and those feelings and whatever it is, because until you're able to do that, then we always have walls that end up going up from whatever experiences that we have, but helping you to gain the skills in order to take that down and to continue to push through and go forward. And I don't think that we talk enough about, I guess in more recent years, we've talked a lot about, doing your mirror work, looking at yourself and building capacity around that so that you can be better for others, yourself, your families, and show up. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And I'll be the first. I put my hand up. If anybody out there listening and you need help with that, I'm here. I don't have all the answers, but I can help to like guide you to where you think you need to go. I'm a spiritual person and a woman of faith, so that's my ground for me, in order to be able to build those spaces and pieces of myself, and then to look at me and how I'm showing up in those ways. Because fear is real. We're humans. There are some things that we are strong in and not so strong in, and we tend to lean on our strengths. But if we don't look at the areas that we're weak, we'll never be as strong as what we can be. So,
Yeah. No, thanks for that. There's 5 things I'm going to share, and then they're really quick. Number one, own your own happiness. Right? Be responsible for things that bring happiness and joy to your heart. Number two, challenge your own story. Change the way you talk to yourself. You wrote the story, so change it. Change the dialogue. And three, enjoy the journey, not the destination. Celebrate all along the way. If you don't see yourself as valuable, no one else will. Four, make relationships count. If you don't like you, it makes it really hard for other people to like you, right? There is no fruit without relationships. You can't be fruitful without relationships that are meaningful and purposeful. And then number five, balance work with play. You can't do all of either one. You must balance people. You must balance. People get a better perspective of who you are if it's not what you leave. It's not what you leave to them that makes them great. It's what you leave in them, right? And you think about what you just talked about, Dr. Hicks, when you just said like, "Hey, reach out." If there's something that I don't know it all, I don't have it all, but reach out. I'm a woman of faith, right? And I'm a man of faith. And if there's something that I can do to support those that are out there, I'm here for you. But I also know you also got to take some initiative, right? You just can't depend on everybody else to do everything for you. You have to have some stake in that game too. But you also can't go play every night and not think about the balance of the work that you got to put in to be successful too. And I think that's really important.
Man, I super appreciate that. For anybody that's still listening, if you got questions, please pop them in the comments. If not, I've got one more question for you guys that I kind of would love to hear your answers for. It'll go for all three of you, but I know you're at different levels. So Larry might be more of a building thing. Dr. Hickson made me more of a district level thing, and same with you, Dr. Briggs. But with that being said, money aside, what is an initiative that you would create to see in your district or building that you would go with to make an impact and change things in a direction that you think that they should be going? But I do understand that money is an issue. So with money not being an issue, I want to hear what you guys would come up with.
I don't know that
I
mine
know
is
that's tough and putting you on the
specific
spot,
to.
but
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know that mine is specific to my district or my school, but just something I would love to see is something along the lines of like an African American uh, cultural center, like where we do have space for young Black youth to come and um, start to learn more about African American history, Black history, and at deeper levels and in deeper ways. I would love if there was a component around language there. In many of the districts around the Dane County area, we see dual language programs, but there aren't any programs that really have a specific or intentional focus around the various languages that are spoken on the continent of Africa. And when I think about dual language and multilingualism, it's not one language. I see students who come from many different places, and when I look at our Black students who are considered multilinguals because they may have recently come to the States or whatever, the best we do is like, let's put pictures alongside the text that they're reading. But like, we don't have people who have really, or not many people who are skilled or have given intentional time and energy to learning those languages. And so I would love to see a space that is just so deeply rich in history and culture and all the things and that make Black culture beautiful and vibrant. And so if I had whatever dollar amount would be needed to make that come into fruition, that would be something I would love to bring into fruition. There would definitely be an educational component all up and through it. Definitely relying on Black educators, and for that, I think about Black educators broadly, not just in the sense of those who have traditionally become licensed, but like kind of thinking back to one of the things Dr. Hicks mentioned earlier is like, how do we leverage the various funds of knowledge within our community? And so bringing that up in there so that, it speaks to the needs and desires of our youth.
Yeah. For me, I would say what I'm about to share is not so much money driven, but I think just good heart. In 1957, Dr. King had a speech, and it was titled "The Birth of a New Nation," where it really centered around the philosophy of nonviolence. And there was like 6 principles that kind of went into that, right? And the first one is information gathering. So that's like where you really get to understand people, you get to understand the situations. It shouldn't cost us anything to learn and ask questions and get to know more about, people and any school district that we go into or any place that we go in society. It shouldn't cost us anything to kind of gather information. It shouldn't cost us anything really to be educated from that information that we gather, right? That information that we're gathering, we're becoming educated on situations, people, things as they've happened so that we're better in the know, and then making a personal commitment, right? We all make commitments to things, right? How do we look at those personal commitments to really be beneficial for us as individuals to better support us in society? And then how are we discussing those things? Are we bringing those to other people? Are we, just learning them for ourselves and not really including other people in it so they can grow as well? And then thinking about the actions behind it. Are we setting actions? Are we taking action around the things that we know should be being done? Right? When you think about our kids that are a number of years behind in literacy, right, or reading at a really low level, not proficient, what actions are we taking given the information that we know? Right? Or are we just sitting back watching it happen? And then every year those kids are getting further and further behind, right? Are we creating systems to support those kids? Are we creating systems to support our educators being better educators, right? To hold themselves even accountable and make some own personal commitments for themselves. And then there's also that, times in which we hurt people. Are we man, woman, boy, and girl enough to say, hey, my bad? It doesn't cost me anything to say, Dr. Hicks, you know what? I made a mistake. I messed up on that one. Dr. Love, you know what? That was my mistake. I own that. I'm going to make it right. I'm going to make it better. Those things don't cost us anything, right? Because those things contribute to a society that is and should be different than it is today, right? Yeah, we all have emotions. We all feel a certain way about certain people that may have crossed us or done certain things, but it doesn't cost us anything to forgive. It doesn't cost us anything to look at the situations that we're in and say that, you know what, I'm going to do what I can to make this situation better, given what I know, how I learned it, and what I can do to make it better. So that's what I would hope. If given the opportunity to do things either differently or better without cost or whatever, or if I had no barriers of monies, I would really lean into those things because I think that would contribute to society in a different way, not just here, but across the world.
We're all thinking similar things because mine is just when I think about where we are as a people and how we're showing up in spaces in the world. Um, the question, how are the children, right? How are the children? And so for me, it's really about thinking about how do we create a system or community or society um, to be able to bring people together in a way that we are all a part of the process of growth and learning, right? The kids, we talk about restorative justice, we talk about community. I don't even think that we know what community is anymore. I mean, truly. And and for families who have had who have had experiences that weren't the best in school and in society, how do we help them to learn and grow and move beyond that, right? Because the historical trauma is what continues to exacerbate lots of things, not just cultural historical trauma. I'm just talking about any trauma that we have experienced, anybody, and really trying to bring the humanity in the space so that we truly are our brothers and sisters keepers, so that we are looking out and supporting and leveraging each other. I don't mean just give them a fish. I mean teaching them how to fish so that they can feed themselves for the rest of their lives. I think that we've gotten so caught up into the haves and have more and want more that we're missing the true purpose of the journey, which is which is joy and happiness and love. And we're searching for that in all of the wrong way, well, the ways that don't support all of us, the masses. It's like, I want mine, I'm gonna get mine, and the more I get. But I mean, you don't have to have a whole bunch of things to truly be happy, right? To truly be joyful. And for me, I think that right now, that's where we are. And if we could create communities, systems, programs, structures, schools where we're doing that, where the parents can look. I get it. but I want you to be learning alongside too of your scholars whenever possible. Not contrary and don't know what's going on. I need you there because you are the first teacher of your children. Like, right? And so I need that partnership. So building all of those systems again, and it's communal. It's communal, and I think for me, until we get back to that sense of village, we're going to continue to struggle because I don't see a village. I haven't seen a village for a long time. I've seen some village in pockets. We don't all understand what village or community is. So if we're operating off of different definitions, that's a problem too, right? Not that a community and a village can have a different definition, but are we even having those conversations to be able to build those definitions? So for me, it's just like, bringing the hearts of the people together.
Having those collective conversations so we can get on the same page. I do feel like this work is heavy. And so I know that was supposed to be my last question, but as everybody was talking and feeling just the heaviness of the work that everybody does, what do you guys do to kind of put yourself at ease to take away from the heaviness of it, whether it be therapy, playing basketball, going golfing? Like, what do you guys do that helps you to still be able to show up and do the work and do it to the best of your abilities? Because unless you're your best self, you won't be able to give anybody else your best self.
For me, I pray. I exercise. I've learned to let go of things I just used to carry. I carry things differently. I used to carry stress all over me and my feet, all and I'm learning how to do that better and just let go so that I can be free. Like I can be free. I'm sitting here. I keep telling myself, Larry, when we walked out of Right that one day, and I ended up going to the urgent care, I think I might have had a stroke. I truly do. But that, and I'm not going to kill myself at doing this work. I'm going to do work hard and show up, but I can't carry the burdens of the world by myself. So
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, and we can't let it kill us because then we're not good for anybody. Um, so to that point, I feel like as a new principal in the previous 2 years, it was like this belief that I had to do all the things all the time, like bringing work home, working late, staying up late, trying to make sure that this was ready for tomorrow because I knew that once I got in the office, the likelihood of me being able to have dedicated time in my computer to do this, that, and the third wasn't going to happen. So I had to take it home and do it because it had to get done. And so I think now, and I by no means consider myself like a veteran administrator, but I'm a veteran at my life, and I say that to say I know what I need for me, and so now if I can't get it done within the working hours, and sometimes I give myself like another hour once I'm home, but like very tight times of which I'm working for work. Um, I ask myself this question at the start of every week: what work am I doing for me this week? And so that's where those personal things like therapy, exercising, all of those things kind of get listed there. But those boundaries are critical. And to Dr. Hicks' point, like she talks about a time she walked out of Right. There was a time where I couldn't leave Right on my own, and Dr. Hicks had to take me to an emergency room. And I don't know if it was work related, life related, what. And then in recent years, I've within just the last year got to a point where I was not well, and actually had to take time away from work to really get back connected with my purpose and my why. And since that point, have also been truly committed to ensuring that I see a therapist regularly. And nothing has to be like wrong. And I think that's kind of how we have stigmatized therapy is like, oh, something has to be wrong before you see a therapist. Some days I just need to be able to release some of the things that are going on. And I've realized that it's not always fair for me to go and pass my things on to these people that I call my friend. Like, certainly many of them will carry it, but like, there are people who get paid to carry those things for you or help you unpack them and process them in ways that sometimes your friends can't do because they don't have necessarily that level of training. And so that's I do that. And then of course, I know Dr. Briggs earlier talked about balance, and so the play and the work. I make sure there's balance there, so I spend time with friends and family, and you know, and make sure I'm able to just kick it and unwind and not be worried about the stresses of work.
Yeah. So prior to doing something that I'm doing right now, I I'm serving as the middle school principal and also the superintendent in my district right now because I'm in the process of hiring a new middle school principal. But prior to that, and I would still say I lean heavily still into these things. Um, I don't let people take my joy. That I don't do. I don't let anyone control me. I don't let anyone kind of come at me a certain way, that kind of thing. And I believe in myself. I believe in me. I believe in the work that I do as a person. I believe in the life that I live. I believe in the good that I can be to also other people. And I've always told my wife this. I've always said I will not allow a job to kill me. I will step away from a job before I allow it to kill me, right? Because I think that's really important for you to know where you are. Like I hear both of you talk about going to the ER, going to see people. Those are all things that we all must consider and have at the forefront of our minds to take care of ourselves. But I also know that I will not allow a job to kill me. I know that. And then lastly, I try to work out every day. My alarm goes off at 3:45 every morning, and I I get up and going about my business to get to the gym as much as I can, and then I get on into work, and then that starts my day.
Yeah, I'm not quite at that 3:45
So
mark yet. I think
I get up at
um,
5.
look, I think that's
Well,
how I
well,
make sure I take care of myself is I sleep past 3:45.
yeah. Well, if I wasn't serving as a principal, it'd be a good hour later. But because I'm serving as a
Okay.
principal now too, I'm still making sure I do the things that I got to do to take care of myself to get there. But if I had that extra hour, that would be good too.
Yeah.
yes, 3:45 is crazy. So hey, I super 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 appreciate you guys tapping in, tuning in, and sharing, and being vulnerable because that last piece was very 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 vulnerable. And so for anybody that knows these individuals or sees them out in the community, say thank you. One, two, if you get an opportunity and you see them about to order coffee or maybe lunch or something, buy it for them. I would also say, like, listen to what they've said. Like, the job, the work that is being done is very stressful, it's hard, it's heavy. And at the end of the day, like, our health is something that is a concern to us and our families. And we're literally putting our lives out there for the betterment of the community and for children in general. So please make sure that you guys are thinking about this and taking that into consideration when you start posting things about these different leaders. Hopefully this shines some light to see that they're human, we're human, everybody's human, and we have feelings, and we're still working for the betterment of the future. And again, we all work with children, so they are our future. So do you guys have any closing words that you want to share before we get out of here?
I just want to say to Dr. Love and then also to Dr. Hicks, it's always a pleasure to, number one, be in the space with you both, to talk to you both, because there's something that I learn each and every time that we conversate. And knowing that I'm in this work along with you just makes it even better that we're doing this work and changing the world one kid at a time, one staff member at a time, and minute by minute, things are happening to uplift each and every one of us because we know how challenging the work is. And I just want you both to know that I really appreciate you both for everything that you do and the years that you've put in this game and the stuff that I've learned from both of you.
I would echo that. And the other thing that we all have in common, just want to put this out there, South Side, because Larry, you lived up in Park Village, that's South Side too.
That is South. That is the South, baby. That is the South. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, every time I'm in a space with y'all, I would echo, like, I learned from you all, but also just want to give mad appreciation to both of you. You both know that you have impacted my career in some way or another, whether it's been mentorship, being a person who actually promoted me, whatever the case may be. So definitely grateful to have you both in my corner and as people that I can learn and grow from. To you, Jamal, just thank you for the opportunity to share and to be in space with all of you and with the larger community who's viewing and listening. Always dope to be able to share a little bit about my story and the work that we do, and just appreciate the opportunity.
Definitely. So much appreciation. So if you guys just hold on for a second, we'll close this thing out, and then until next time, thank you guys.